I'm Joe Lovett, and I've been reporting on medicine and health for 20 years. But when HBO first asked me to look at where we were in the war against cancer, it was my most personal assignment. Cancer was a subject I had grown up with. My mother had been treated for thyroid cancer in the 1930s. Though surgery and experimental radiation cured her, she still lived in fear of the disease all her life. In 1953, when I was 8 years old, my father was diagnosed with cancer of the colon. Surgery revealed it had spread to his liver, and there was nothing the doctors could do. My mother took him home to care for him. All my brothers and my sister came home for his final weeks. He was 48 when he died. So cancer was a reality that we were all acquainted with. But years later, the association became overwhelming. Colon cancer killed my brother Raul when he was 55. Ovarian cancer killed my sister Tricia at 61. And lung cancer killed my brother Bill at 63. So doing a film on cancer has allowed me to face my own fears. I've seen that the world of cancer is changing, and those changes affect my life and yours. Through the process of making this film, I've met some of the leading researchers and physicians, patients, survivors, and activists.
Is that it?
That was it. If this were 1962, she wouldn't be here now.
80% of those kids are cured.
I've learned that there's a whole new way of thinking about and dealing with cancer.
Well, you came in for your annual cancer screening exam.
An ongoing revolution in our knowledge of how cancer evolves and how we can prevent it.
So it's grown.
It's grown.
Or detect it early and hopefully cure it.
This database has the full text of over 100 journals.
There is now information and choices that didn't exist just a few years ago. Information and choices that can prolong or even save our lives.
Knowledge is power. What we have to do is make people aware of that.
A doctor may have told somebody 2 months ago that, sorry, there's no treatment for this particular kind of illness, and then 2 weeks after that, there could have been a treatment developed. It's ever-changing, incredibly rapidly.
Cancer don't wait for you. It will take you out. And you just have to go to the resources to get the information, to know no one's not going to give it to you. They're not going to come to you. They're not going to knock on your door. You got to go out there and get it yourself.
Cancer will develop in 1 out of 3 American women and in 1 out of 2 American men. Every year, over 560,000 Americans die of cancer, and over 1.2 million new cases are diagnosed. After skin cancer, which affects over 1 million Americans annually, the most common cancers are colorectal, lung, breast, and prostate. The leading cancer killers are prostate, breast, colorectal, and lung. Without including millions of skin cancer cases, over 8 million Americans alive today have had a cancer diagnosis.
To look for the best information on cancer, I started at the United States government's National Cancer Institute in Bethesda, Maryland. It's the world's leading cancer research center. There, many of the top cancer doctors in the world study, teach, and treat cancer. As director of the institute, Dr. Richard Klausner wants people to know the progress that's been made and what still needs to be done. There are a lot of myths about cancer. What do you think is the most alarming one?
I think the most alarming myth about cancer is that a diagnosis of cancer is a death sentence. It's not true.
It's not anymore.
No. Now, the majority of patients diagnosed with cancer will not die of that cancer.
Dr. Klausner believes that such progress is not just from advances in research, but also from patients' active involvement in their own care.
An active patient means that the patient feels that he or she is participating in the decisions that are made, in the questions that are asked. Often, patients will ask doctors questions, get an answer. The end of that answer is a period, and that means that's it. That's all you're going to get. I think an active patient is able to say, wait a second, I didn't get that. Or goes home and thinks about that and says, you know, I still don't get that. I don't know what that means. Does that mean this?
My sister Tricia was the first person I ever knew who typified what Dr. Klausner calls the active patient. After she was diagnosed with late-stage ovarian cancer, she had strong ideas about her role in the process. We talked about it just a few months before she died.
I called up my surgeon and told him, as you know, that I wanted to sit down and talk to him with my clothes on, that I realized that I had never spoken to this man dressed. And I had sat down that morning and had written him a letter telling him who I was and what I could bring to the situation and what my expectation was of him.
In her letter, she wrote, "I need to be heard, to have you know my fears and expectations. I want to be consulted, if possible, to be in on any decisions that are to be made in my behalf. I bring to the situation my strong mind and sturdy body and a fierce desire to continue my life." After interviewing several surgeons, Tricia chose Alfred Cohen.
Tricia wanted me to know who she was as a person. She wasn't just a human being who had a serious medical problem, but what she brought to her side. And she was a team player, which is extremely important. It's not just lay back and let the healthcare profession look after you.
Though her prognosis was just a year, she lived 6. Determined to make it easier for others, Tricia and friends founded HOPE, a support center for families dealing with cancer in Rhode Island. Today, there are hundreds of centers like HOPE across the country, some local, some national. They are part of the cancer revolution, helping you to actively participate in your own care.
For more information about community cancer information centers, call Cancer Care at 1-800-813-HOPE. And for the next 6 months, HBO's special cancer website can link you to all the cancer organizations discussed in this program and more. Log on at hbo.com.
Too often when you're ill, you have a diagnosis like this, you want to hand over a tremendous amount to your doctor. You want to fully trust them. People have to realize that it's not a question of trust to ask questions, to seek other opinions, to seek other information, to contact support groups, to get high-quality information that's available, and then to bring that to your doctor. And if you're not satisfied with the answer, then you need to walk away.
Hey, Gail, let's go for a ride.
For Gary Shine, a business consultant in Providence, Rhode Island, getting more information and a second opinion saved his life.
I was naive, and I just thought that anyone who goes to the doctor, particularly a specialist who's diagnosed with a serious illness, can expect that that doctor has the latest information on treatment available to them. What I learned is, no, that's not the case. It's the patient's responsibility to make sure that they're getting the best available.
In 1990, at the age of 38, Gary was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer called hairy cell leukemia. According to Gary, his doctor said there was no cure, but offered him the standard therapy of the time.
And he told me, we can't cure it. He was very clear about that, but we can slow it down. First, we're going to remove your spleen, and then we're going to, at the point where that stops being of any value, we're going to start you on a drug called interferon, which will keep it in abeyance for a while. The only thing that comes to mind is just a fear that kept coming in levels upon levels. Well, what about Ellen, and what about Adam, and what about Laura? And then of me not being there to share it in any way. I just don't have words. I just don't have the words beyond that.
You were afraid that Laura wouldn't remember you. Laura was 2 when Gary was diagnosed, and she wouldn't have remembered him if he had died on schedule.
The next thing that I decided to do was to find out information. I mean, I was thinking, hey, I'm being told this is going to kill me. I at least want to learn as much as I can about this.
We're not medical doctors. We became very adept at reading medical information, but I don't think that's a function of anything about us. It was life or death. You have to do this, and I think anyone can.
After talking to the Leukemia Society, I learned that 3 months before my diagnosis, the New England Journal of Medicine published an article on this new treatment that was developed in California that was incredibly effective against exactly what I had. And I was, blown away is the only way I could put it, that my doctor tells me one thing, which is basically that you're going to die. And this other article saying that, hey, it looks like there's a full cure that just might be available.
So what did you do?
Basically, I took the New England Journal article into him and said, hey, gee, what do you think of this? I found this. It wasn't in some esoteric journal from the middle of nowhere. It was one of the most prestigious journals in medicine. And he dismissed it. He said, well, I don't really believe in clinical trials. I don't want my patients treated as guinea pigs. Ellen talked me into, early on I wasn't sure whether I wanted a second opinion, which, it's hard for me to admit that because my first advice to anybody, gotta get a second opinion. Get a second opinion is the most important thing. But, I just figured, well, gee, this guy knows what he's talking about. What am I going to learn in a second opinion?
Oh, yeah, you did say that. I forgot about that. There are people who don't want to hurt their doctor's feelings. There are lots of people like that who just wouldn't it offend the doctor if I got a second opinion. Frankly, that's not the most important thing when you have cancer.
The National Cancer Institute's Cancer Information Service can direct you to the best institutions near you to get a second opinion, including the NCI-designated comprehensive cancer centers. Because the Cancer Information Service can help you with the latest, most accurate information on all aspects of cancer, we will be repeating their number throughout the broadcast. It is 1-800-4-CANCER. Or log on to cancer.gov.
Gary sought out a second opinion regarding the new drug, then called 2CDA. That doctor thought that the new treatment, part of a study in San Diego, looked promising.
So that was the decision I made to go to California. The whole treatment was only a week long. It was 7 days continuous infusion.
We've treated about 400 patients with this disease, but actually Gary Shine sticks out. He impressed upon me that the way he got to receive this drug was through his own endeavors.
I think if everybody felt that they didn't want to be a guinea pig, that they didn't want to try anything new, first of all, patients like this wouldn't benefit, but in the second place, we'd never be able to develop and legitimize treatments that are better than treatments that we had before.
Increasing access to clinical trials is a major part of the revolution against cancer. Clinical trials are just one step in a long process of bringing new drugs to the public. First, researchers isolate potential drugs from thousands of natural and synthetic substances. Then these drugs are studied in test tubes and in animals, usually for years. A small fraction, found to be reasonably safe and potentially beneficial, move on to be studied in humans. These people must have conditions that qualify them to try the new drugs. These studies are called clinical trials. Only if a drug continues to prove safe and effective will it be approved by the FDA for release to the public. The whole process, from discovery to prescription, can take 15 to 20 years. 2.5 years after Gary's clinical trial, 2CDA was approved by the FDA for the treatment of hairy cell leukemia. It's now 9 years since Gary's treatment, and there's been no sign of recurrence.
If I were diagnosed with something and faced with the choice of having adequate money and all the information available, or a little bit of information and all the money available, I would choose the information.
To see if there's a clinical trial that may help you, call the Cancer Information Service at 1-800-4-CANCER. For more information about hairy cell leukemia, other leukemias, and lymphomas, call the Leukemia Society of America at 1-800-955-4LSA.
They think that serious discussions about it are happening today. And
Ellen Stovall directs the National Coalition for Cancer Survivorship. The NCCS is a clearinghouse for information. It advocates for the rights of the 8 million cancer survivors in the United States. Ellen credits her survival to clinical trials.
In 1971, there was a clinical trial of chemotherapy for Hodgkin's disease, but I was not eligible for the trial, so I had radiation alone, which they hoped would give me 2-year survival. In 1984, 12 years later, having outlived the prognosis, I had a recurrence of my cancer. And the protocol that was in clinical trial in 1971 became standard treatment for Hodgkin's disease, and that's what I was treated with in 1984. If that trial hadn't gotten done, if somebody hadn't paid, if people hadn't enrolled, I'd be dead.
One of our major goals is to significantly increase the number of adult patients that are enrolled in clinical trials. Our model, in many ways, is what we've been able to achieve over the past 30 years in pediatric cancer. And it's very different.
Today, only 3% of adults with cancer enroll in clinical trials, but over 60% of children with cancer participate. That rate of participation is one factor in the progress we've made against childhood cancers. In the early 1950s, only 20% of children with cancer survived for 5 years. Today, the survival rate is over 70%.
Oh, this hat I wear in the winter. It's a hot hat. And this is, I like this. It's a comfortable hat. It's fuzzy, warm. Now this is one of my favorite ones, but nothing ever matches it, so I can't ever wear it. And this is another Laura Ingalls hat. You sleep in, I don't sleep in a lot. And that's my hats.
Jessica has acute lymphoblastic leukemia, or ALL, and I think a lot of people who don't know somebody with cancer, haven't been involved with pediatric oncology, don't know how far we've come in treating cancer. For example, with leukemia, with acute lymphoblastic leukemia, which is the most common type of leukemia in childhood, we progressed from it being a pretty much uniformly fatal disease to a cure rate of around 80%.
Wow.
Right, so 8 out of 10 children with ALL today are cured of their disease.
Get that dog out of there.
Wait, gotta squeeze her off.
Jessica Turi, her parents, Allison and Steve, and her sister Jordan live just outside of Memphis, Tennessee.
Just skip, sir. Wait, we do one at a time.
Allison teaches elementary school, and Steve's a video technician. When Jessica was diagnosed, it wasn't the family's first brush with cancer. Steve had just been successfully treated for testicular cancer.
Since I've already kind of been there, I can help her through it, at least try to make the load a little easier to bear. I mean, I hope I do anyway.
When Jessie first became ill, it was weeks before anyone suspected she had leukemia. She was diagnosed at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital in Memphis. It's one of the leading institutions for childhood cancer. This visit is at week 30 of a chemotherapy regimen that will last more than 2 years.
Hey, Jessica, how you doing?
Good.
Good to see you. How you been?
I'm doing good.
Allison, how are you?
Good.
What's going on?
Well,
Did you have a good week?
yeah.
If this were 1962, she wouldn't be here now. And that's the cold truth about it. It was a deadly disease, just like a wildfire, and they just have made amazing progress.
Well, it's true that we've come very far, and for some diseases such as ALL, the cure rates are very high, although for others we haven't made as much progress. But it's still not a recipe book, and we're still trying to learn more about how to treat cancer. And, we really, until we cure everybody, it won't be a recipe book. So right now, we prefer all patients to be put on clinical trials so we can learn more about cancer and more about the treatments of cancer.
Look in your mouth.
The protocols are designed to deliver the therapy in the safest way possible. So there are very strict guidelines written into the protocols regarding what side effects to watch for, when to alter therapy because of side effects. So patients on protocol are monitored probably more carefully than patients who are not on protocols.
Okay, you look great. You have any questions, concerns? Anything you need?
I need Imla,
Emla cream for
morphine.
your report. Morphine for what?
pain.
For the Christine pain, okay.
Usually, Jessica's drugs don't interfere with her normal routine, but the monthly doses of vincristine do cause her a few days of pain.
That's the worst part, the pain. I can't make it go away. She feels like she's been smashed. She'll say, all my bones hurt. Don't touch me there. Don't touch me. Just don't touch me.
You would think sitting down would help, but sitting down makes it worse. So you can't lie down at night, and so you like to kick the bed and move your feet all the time. So that's why I go swimming, do something else, and don't just sit there.
Hey, girl.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Hi,
Are you ready to get your medicine?
I'm ready.
Okay. Come on.
You got new letters.
Yeah. That means I'm certified or certifiable.
What's all this confetti?
That's where another little girl went off therapy this morning.
Cool.
And she got confetti thrown on her for her party. You'll get yours one of these days.
Was that it?
That was it.
Okay.
The therapy we give is very intense and often has some very serious side effects. And so the treatment really needs to be given at oncology centers by staff that are familiar with chemotherapy and know how to deal with the side effects. Because the therapy is not benign.
Stretch it.
To find a cancer treatment center near you, call the Cancer Information Service at 1-800-4CANCER or log on to hbo.com.
All right. See you next week. Give me a hug till next week.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. You be good.
Okay.
Do you ever try to protect Jessica?
I kept a little boy's death from her once, and it was a mistake. A big mistake. So no, I don't anymore. What good does it do? I mean, it's a fact. It's a fact. It won't help prepare her. And I think if I hide things from her and then she finds out, then she's afraid. Why did Mama keep that from me? Why didn't she tell me? Is it going to happen to me? The little boy that I was talking about just a minute ago, the reason I kept it from her is because he had what she had, got fever, like they all do. They put him in with fever. He had a seizure, and he died. No reason, So I didn't want her to be scared that whenever she got fever, so I didn't tell her that. But she found out, and it was worse. It's worse to lie to her. She's way too smart for that.
I haven't really known a lot of people really close yet, but you walk by them and you see everybody, so it's like you know everybody. But you just know that they're in a good place now and out of pain.
You just got bad news?
Friend that died. Yeah. Just 10. But the nurse that told me, I told her that was 10. She said, I've lost count. She was One of the girls on our team the other night, she told me. Yeah. She's a sweet little girl.
Help for families dealing with childhood cancer is available at the Candlelighters Childhood Cancer Foundation at 1-800-366-2223. Or call the National Childhood Cancer Foundation at 1-800-458-6223.
Cancer is not a new disease. Dinosaur bones, dating back over 150 million years, show the earliest evidence of cancer. Signs of cancer in humans have been found in Egyptian mummies embalmed over 4,000 years ago. Hippocrates, the ancient Greek known as the father of medicine, named the disease karkinos, meaning crab, for the way the tumor appeared to spread. Surgery as treatment began even before the Middle Ages. Though plant extracts have been used for centuries, modern chemotherapy was born in World War II, when nitrogen mustard proved effective against lymphomas. Radiation as therapy was born over 100 years ago. Emil Grube, a medical student, noticed that X-rays burned his hands. He applied his discovery to the treatment of breast cancer. But while we've been treating cancer for centuries, it's only in the last 10 years that the origins of cancer have become clear. Many people think of cancer as a foreign invader, and something that comes from the outside. Does it ever?
Well, cancer is much worse than a foreign invader. It's a traitor.
It's a traitor.
I mean, cancer is our own cells, our own flesh and blood, rebelling and killing us. It is one cell changing over time so that it misbehaves. And the misbehavior is that it keeps multiplying, copying itself. It is a cell that loses the normal ability to die, which is another way the body normally keeps a check on how many cells are in our body. Cancer cells become immortal. And it doesn't stay where it's supposed to stay. Now, all of our cells are programmed to live as very well-behaved members of a highly organized community. Brain cells stay in the brain, liver cells stay in the liver, breast cells stay in the breast.
Maintain a form.
And they maintain a form. They have an architecture. Cancer cells ignore those rules of architecture. They ignore those rules of geography. They no longer remember where they're supposed to live and so spread. And that's, of course, one of the mechanisms by which cancer cells actually kill people. So that's what cancer is.
That's what cancer is, but what causes it? That's a question that has plagued researchers for years. Dr. Bert Vogelstein heads the molecular genetics team at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland. It is just one of the labs zoning in on the answers.
There has really been a revolution in cancer research over the last decade, in that the molecular basis for cancer has been discovered, which has allowed researchers to identify genes that are altered in cancers, and that very clearly those alterations are what cause the disease. It's absolutely unambiguous. And all efforts towards controlling it, whether it be preventing it or curing it, are now directed at these genes. They're the targets. We know who the enemies are now.
Dr. Vogelstein and his colleagues are world famous for their research on genetic mutations leading to colon cancer. That's the same cancer that killed my father and my brother Roll.
Okay, that's normal colon.
Okay, because that means the cells are like very orderly, is that it?
Very orderly. These are cells, colon cells, and they're lined up quite nicely, and this is what it should look like. And here is a colon cancer.
Is this from the same?
Same patient, just
a different part of his colon.
It's a millimeter away.
Oh, you're
from
kidding.
what I showed you before.
So this is the irregularity that...
It's irregularity. There are lots of cells. It's not just a single cell. They're not behaving normally. They're piling up on one another. It's malformed, and they're starting to spread in the lining, into the lining of the colon, which is what's going to kill the patient if unchecked. Once it starts to spread, the surgery can't remove it.
Now, in slides, can you actually see the genes?
No. You cannot see genes. They're much too small to see.
So what can you see that indicates that, oh, well, that's, that's the colon cancer gene?
I'll show you. So, this is a sequencing gel. Looking for...
I had never really understood just exactly what a gene was.
Sequence of genes. Each gene has roughly 1,000 to 10,000 building blocks in it.
Dr. Vogelstein showed me that a gene is a coded sequence of chemical instructions along the DNA strand in the nucleus of the cell. Software, in effect, that tells the cell how to behave.
Building blocks in it.
Then this mistake will be repeated?
Oh, this is in every cell of that person. Okay? There are 50 trillion cells in the person, and every cell in that person, there's only one difference.
Just one tiny difference.
That single difference.
He showed me how one change in a gene can start a cell down the pathway to cancer.
Cancers require not only a single genetic defect or mutation to become cancerous. There's a whole series of mutations that develop over time. In colon cancer, that's particularly clear. It takes at least 5 mutations to get from a normal cell within the colon to a malignant colon cancer. And those mutations literally take 20 to 40 years to accumulate, one after another, one every 5 or 10 years. Now, that gives us an enormous window of time to intervene in the process.
Scientists now believe that only about 10% of all cancer patients inherit the genetic mutations that start the development of their cancer. Genetic mutations, or as some people call them, genetic hits, can occur from exposure to everyday things. The sun, some of the foods we eat, the cigarettes we smoke, the alcohol we drink, by certain viruses and bacteria, and by some chemicals in industrial pollution. But the most common way for mutations to occur is through the normal process of cell division. Each time a cell divides, it copies its genes. And with each copy, there's a chance of error, a chance of a typo, so to speak. The longer we live, the greater our chance of accumulating enough mutations to cause cancer. That's why most cancers occur in older people. New technology has hastened the pace of cancer research. The best doctors pursue the latest research findings, often at meetings. One of the world's largest is held by ASCO, the American Society of Clinical Oncology. The big news at this meeting are the results of clinical trials on Herceptin, the first breast cancer drug successfully developed to target defective genes.
We began to look at human breast cancer specimens for alterations in genes that were involved in growth regulation. What we found was that the addition of Herceptin made a significant increase in all of the parameters that we were looking at. There was a significant increase in the response rate of 50%.
Results like these are one sign that decades of research are paying off in new ways. Gary Schwartz, a leading researcher and clinician at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, traveled from New York to Los Angeles to learn what new hope he might find for his patients.
There's a lot of hope that when I come back to New York, that I'll come in contact with a new drug program or a new concept that I can bring back to the clinic and impact upon their therapy.
At the actual site of the endothelial cell.
Gary's specialty is colorectal cancer, which after lung cancer is the second leading cancer killer in the United States. Each year, over 56,000 American men and women die from colorectal cancer, and almost 130,000 new cases are diagnosed. Most of these cases need never occur because colorectal cancer is almost totally preventable by early detection. But only 40% of Americans get the recommended screening tests for colorectal cancer.
I think it's very tragic when a patient comes in with a life-threatening cancer that could have been prevented or picked up at an early stage, which would have been curable. If patients undergo screening, there are many cancers that can be picked up at early stages.
I just didn't get medical checkups or help unless I had a specific problem. Not knowing I had the problem, I just went through many years of not having anything, including a colonoscopy. And I'm sure that if I had, this could have been caught at a much earlier stage than the stage 4 colon cancer that I'm in right now.
All cancers have different stages, and they're all based on a similar way of evaluating them. And the stages, at least in colon cancer, are stage A, B, C, and D. We keep it very simple by letters. A stage is a very superficial cancer, one really on the surface of the inner wall of the colon. You can think of the colon as a tube. And if you think of the inside of the tube as where the cancer cell develops in the inner wall. And that's where the polyp forms. And as it moves from in to out, that's more invasive, more deeply invasive into the wall. We call that a B. What happens now, from B to C, the cancer cell is spread. It's gone one step further into the glands, the drainage glands around the colon. Finally, if the cell now not only is in the gland, but it's moved through the blood and settled in an organ, we call that a D. That's called metastatic disease, metastases. Could be any cancer, breast cancer, prostate cancer, lung cancer. Everything has a chance to metastasize. Sometimes what you hear a patient says, you know, they come to see us and they say, I've got a cancer in my liver. Well, it doesn't mean they have liver cancer. It means they might have had another cancer, a primary cancer, and those cancer cells, say, from the colon, have shed out into the bloodstream or the lymphatics and has settled in the liver.
Although his colon cancer had metastasized and was too advanced to cure, Arnold, a retired engineer, wanted to do whatever he could to extend his life.
How are you?
A little bit of nausea this morning, but that's usual, you know, on the 3rd or 4th day.
After he recovered from surgery, I met him and we sat down and talked about the various treatment options. From the very beginning, Mr. Sitton was very interested in innovative treatments.
Arnold tried one clinical trial, but there was no improvement. Then the Sittons learned of a new drug, oxaliplatin, showing promising results in Europe, but not available to Arnold in the States. On the internet, the Sittons found Dr. Francis Levy, who was running trials in Paris. Vivian emailed and asked for his help.
I suddenly find myself in France and suddenly realize that I'm under the best possible thing to buy time until the next thing comes along. In here, have you got the CAT scans of the thorax, abdomen, and pelvic?
Yes, make sure it's all
Armed with copies of all of his records, Arnold and Vivian prepare for their appointment.
I don't think anyone ever knows what they can do till they do it. And I would never have dreamed we were capable of facing tremendous odds like we have and fighting them like we are.
Bonjour. Good morning. Good morning.
On a previous trip, Arnold had started his treatment, hoping to reduce the size of the tumors on his liver, tumors that can kill him if they grow. Now, on this their second visit, the Sittons will see if the drug is working. Dr. Levy doesn't find any new lesions on the CAT scans, and he hopes the drug is stopping the spread of the cancer.
It's a good trend.
Okay.
We're on the right track, I would say.
Okay. Have you had any that had reduction like my husband's, but yet didn't have any reduction the second half?
Yes.
You have, so
This
that's
can happen.
possible
Yes,
also.
this can happen.
Okay.
This
Yes.
can happen. So I am not sure what we will get next time.
No
What
guarantees.
Okay.
Yes. All right. Yes. Very good.
Thank you.
Okay.
He understands that he is not going to be cured from the cancer. Of course, he would like to be cured, but his main intention is to try to slow it down and prolong his life. He is very interested in pursuing any type of aggressive treatment or innovative treatment that has the potential for doing this. If he was not able to pursue this, I think he would lose hope. I think that he would have a poor quality of life, and I think that he would be very dejected and he would not enjoy the remaining time that he has.
Under a situation like this, today is the day. Time becomes very important. I think I enjoy things moment by moment much more than I did before. And to see all that we've done today and the beauty of this country just makes it a special day. I think even more a special day than if I did not have this disease. The world is changing so fast with the new biological things and computers and all the new thinking that's coming about. Progression is coming so fast that the answer is not far away. And I hope that I am there when that answer is found.
There are currently over 350 new anti-cancer drugs, either in clinical trials or awaiting FDA approval to begin clinical trials. To find out more information about new drugs, call the Cancer Information Service at 1-800-4-CANCER. The Colon Cancer Alliance website provides screening information as well as support for survivors. Log on at ccalliance.org. You can also get information about colorectal cancer from the American Cancer Society by calling 1-800-ACS-2345.
Cancer is an opportunity to wake up to the fact that this is a snapshot. This moment, this time is very temporary. And I think it's that awareness that people who are dying give us if we allow it to happen to us. If we don't say, oh, that could never happen to me, it's going to happen to you. It's going to happen to me.
And that's what people share in support groups.
Yeah.
That understanding.
Yeah. Support groups are just another way of seeing yourself and mirroring yourself and your own fears, hearing somebody else say them. And a support group can be one other person. As long as you're sharing your experience, that sharing is just it's a gift you give the other person.
Coming to you this evening, most gracious and loving God, thanking you for the opportunity to come together one more time. Thanking you for allowing us to see a new year, 1999. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for this organization. Thank you for the mission of this organization. We just thank you and we praise you and we give you all the glory. In your precious name we pray. Amen. Amen. Put up some courage.
It will either make you or break you. Yes. It depends upon, you know, what type of person you are. You know, if you really let it get you down, it really will break you down. And the support groups really, really help.
It's wonderful.
I just want to say that I'm a week and one day out of a second surgery, and I wanted to be with people. I'm kind of tired of being by myself. I had to realize that I couldn't fight this battle by myself. And I'm asking you ladies to give me some support and help so that I can make it through this, because the surgery was not my problem. I just don't like chemo, and I don't want it. And I know it's good for me, but I just don't want it. And I need your help to get me through it, please.
Women will come in and say, well, I've had the lumpectomy or I had the mastectomy, but I have not taken chemo. Because chemo does this and chemo does that. Hearsay, mind you, not anybody that they've spoken to that's had the chemo. So I put them with someone who is probably the same age or something about them is similar and let them talk to the women who have gone through the chemo.
I'll be your buddy. Chemo is a mother, isn't it?
We have to be real with it, and we don't play with it. We don't try to fluff it up or, make something look better or feel better. This is the way it is. If you don't get your diagnosis early enough, if you don't have your treatment, you won't live. It's just that simple.
Been there, done that.
Been there and done that.
That's right.
So you can do it too.
I got to.
You got to do it.
I'll call you next week, buddy. All right. We'll get through this together. Okay. All right.
Participation in support groups has been shown to improve quality of life and may help to extend life. Studies are underway to better understand the relationship between support groups and survival. For information about the Sisters Network, a support organization for African American women with breast cancer, call 1-713-781-0255. Gilda's Club is a free support community for people living with cancer, their families, and friends. To find a Gilda's Club near you, call 1-888-GILDA-4U. The Wellness Community offers a range of free psychosocial services for people living with cancer and their loved ones. To find a wellness center near you, call 1-888-793-WELL.
Hey.
How you doing?
Hey, good.
Karen introduced me to Vanessa Colbert, a jazz promoter, and her father Vernon.
See, you
Vanessa, Karen says, is one of the most persistent patients she's ever met.
When I met Vanessa, which is somewhat unusual in the sense that my husband and I were at a jazz concert, and Vanessa came over to our table during the concert, not intermission now, and said, "Aren't you that breast cancer lady?" and sat down. So she sat down for about 10 minutes to talk about, she thinks she may have a problem. She never said cancer. She never said breast, but I knew what she was talking about.
Each year, over 43,000 American women die from breast cancer, and 175,000 are newly diagnosed. A higher percentage of white women get breast cancer, but primarily because of late diagnosis, African American women are more likely to die from the disease. For more information about cancer risk in minorities, call the government's Office of Minority Health Resource Center at 1-800-444-6472.
Vanessa often experienced breast pain during her periods, but when it persisted, she went to see her doctor.
I took off my blouse, he looked at it, he just touched it and everything. He said, "I think you got breast cancer and it's growing fast." He said, "What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna step out on the limb and I'm gonna call a couple of doctors I know." He said, because he knew what kind of insurance I had too. He said, "And you better go to these appointments."
Vanessa was soon diagnosed with stage 3 inflammatory breast cancer. Though a rare cancer, it is extremely aggressive and difficult to treat. Vanessa wanted to be treated at MD Anderson, a comprehensive cancer center, but she soon discovered she had problems with her insurance.
I had disability insurance, life insurance, health insurance, every kind of insurance you could think.
So she thought she was covered.
Still wasn't covered. I couldn't understand that. I couldn't get it. I was mad.
If you have questions about insurance or about how to pay for your care, you can call Cancer Care at 1-800-813-HOPE. You can also call the National Coalition for Cancer Survivorship at 1-877-NCCS-YES.
Ultimately, Vanessa was forced to seek treatment at a public hospital. Despite her inflammatory breast cancer, they wanted to do surgery immediately, even before chemo.
And that's not
state-of-the-art care. In some facilities, they're not up to speed, so to speak, with regards to what should be done for a patient. And consequently, that contributes sometimes to the increased mortality rates that one will see in terms of the uninformed.
But Vanessa was informed, and she knew her best chance was to get chemo before surgery.
I had to really work the system, go from this place to that place. So getting chemo, staying on track with the chemo treatments was the biggest challenge for me.
After completing chemo, Vanessa had a mastectomy of the left breast. But with 16 out of 17 lymph nodes testing positive for cancer, conventional follow-up chemo did not look very promising.
So you were very willing to do clinical trials. In fact, you sought them out, right?
Yes.
We collect stem cells or bone marrow cells from the bloodstream.
Dr. Michelle Donato at MD Anderson runs clinical trials in stem cell transplants. With Vanessa's savings depleted, Medicaid paid for the trial.
The prognosis with standard treatment is certainly very poor. When we looked at our experience here at Anderson, looking at 27 patients with inflammatory breast cancer who had failed standard chemotherapy, all of the patients had had a recurrence within 18 to 24 months. So overall, all of the patients had had a recurrence. And when your chance of recurrence is 100%, it's worth trying a little bit more aggressive therapy.
Though an approved treatment for some cancers, high-dose chemotherapy with stem cell transplantation is an extremely controversial therapy for breast cancer.
The principle of giving transplantation for these diseases is that we want to give higher doses of chemotherapy. The problem with chemotherapy is that it also destroys the bone marrow. And the bone marrow is the manufacturer for all the blood cells. So in order to be able to deliver such high doses of chemotherapy, what we need to do is remove some bone marrow first and freeze it, so it's protected from chemo.
It took 3 hours to collect Vanessa's stem cells, but the extensive chemo required a 2-week hospitalization.
Then we took the stem cells out of the freezer, thawed those cells, and gave her those cells back.
Hi, I was looking for my cousin. Oh, there she is. Hi. How was your ride?
That was pretty good. You ready?
Yes, we're ready.
Okay, let's go. We're going to do your chest x-ray and your CAT scan together. Go ahead and sign in for me right here.
It's been 5 weeks since Vanessa's high-dose treatment.
Good morning, radiology.
Today's tests will show if cancer is still detectable in her body.
Do I have to take that barium?
Yes.
Oh. So what you have to do? I got to drink that barium. You have to drink it? Yep. That white stuff? Yeah.
That's your first 2 out of 3.
How many I got to drink?
3.
3?
Uh-huh. You drink 2 here and your third one in the prep room, okay?
When Vanessa is x-rayed, the barium will help highlight any tumors.
Let me hold one for you.
Ugh.
Man. Do it taste like milk? Tastes like nasty.
So what we are doing is looking at your chest and your abdomen.
Breathe in. Hold your breath. Breathe in. Hold your breath.
Right now we are just praying and hoping that all the results come back perfect and that the cancer will be cured.
You can get help from the Why Me Breast Cancer Organization. It provides a 24-hour support hotline for questions about breast cancer at 1-800-221-2141. You can also call the National Alliance of Breast Cancer Organizations at 1-888-80-NABCO. Or you can log on to hbo.com.
Do you think that people are aware of this enough, are aware that there are steps to take, that there are diagnostics to be used, that there's prevention to be done? Do you think they're aware of the power that we have to keep from getting cancer?
I think there's a growing awareness, but it's mixed with confusion about mixed messages that we all read about in the newspaper about what prevents cancer or what causes cancer, and it seems to change.
Because one minute you hear that something's good for you, the next minute you hear that something's not good for you, and it's very hard to sort out, and you don't want to miss a chance to do something for yourself.
Why is that so confusing? I mean, and people ask this all the time. Why can't you make up your mind? We often confuse the report of studies as if the study is the final judgment, when each study is reporting a piece of evidence.
Right.
It takes time. It often takes many studies to put together the evidence to find out what the real answer is.
There's a lot of good information out there, and there's a lot of bad information out there. Learning how to discern the difference is very important. The National Cancer Institute is probably one of the best resources for information. The Cancer Information Service, 1-800-4-CANCER. Excellent resource.
Good morning, Cancer Information Service. How can I help you?
What the database does say for stage 1 breast cancer, and just to share with you what stage 1 is, that is an early stage breast cancer, and the cancer is no larger than 2 centimeters, which is about 1 inch, and has not spread outside the breast.
And I'll just remind you, sir, as I do share this with you, that I'm not a physician. Okay, we're trained as cancer information specialists. The stages used for bladder cancer would be stage 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Once you find out the specific chemotherapy treatment, call us back. We'll take down that information, and within 24 hours, we can do a search for you.
We've noticed that a lot of patients and family members are playing a larger role in terms of the information that they're seeking. A lot of the callers have already visited our website on the internet.
So what we share with them is what we have from the National Cancer Institute, say on new studies or anything that the media had put out or any articles, and we try to help them in that way, how to get the latest information and access to the latest treatments.
I've likened being diagnosed with cancer like you're really literally a ship without a rudder. And navigation becomes a good metaphor, I think, for the cancer experience, because without that navigation, you really, literally are lost. You need people to help you, and you need to let people help you.
To get the help you need, call the National Cancer Institute's Cancer Information Service at 1-800-4-CANCER. And for the next 6 months, HBO's special cancer website can link you to all the cancer organizations discussed in this program and more at hbo.com.
Considering my family history, my own risk of developing cancer is high.
Thank you. You can have a seat in the waiting area. It's going to be about 5 or 10 minutes. Okay?
Waiting area back there?
Right over there.
After a genetic counseling session at Johns Hopkins, I was tested for genes that might predispose me to cancer.
So 5 years ago, they really didn't know anything about this
The first colon cancer gene was identified in, I guess it was 93, so we're going on 6 years now. So it's really been in only a matter of about 5.5, 6 years that we've gotten to the point where we are, where we can actually offer people testing and tell people that yes, there is something there that predisposes them, and this is something that we need to worry about and make recommendations on that basis.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
We can only wonder what will happen in the next 5 years.
You're a good one, too. Can you hear it?
This is all new. This is really the last 5 years that anything practical could be gained, and the physicians obviously are learning very quickly through meetings and medical articles, etc. And it won't be long before all physicians know. But you know, I don't think one can always rely on his or her physician. I think it's important to take take one's health into one's own hands.
A genetic counselor can provide information and support to families who may be at risk for hereditary cancers. For a genetic counselor near you, call the National Society of Genetic Counselors at 1-610-872-7608. To learn more about genetic counseling, log on to hbo.com.
Mr. Lovett?
Yes.
Good morning.
Hi.
My name's Carol, one of the nurses.
My genetic tests were inconclusive, but my family history still leaves me at risk. One thing I can do to prevent cancer is to get a yearly colonoscopy, which I started doing at the age of 40. My doctor has never found cancer, but twice he has found and removed polyps that might have become cancer. I'm lucky that because of my family history, I know to look. Most people with cancer don't have a family history of that cancer, so they often don't think to have the detection tests that can save their lives.
Hi, Mr. Lovett. How are you?
Good.
Good.
I've got a family history, so I know to look.
Right.
Right. Because my father died at 48,
right,
which meant he had to have a polyp around 41 or so.
Right.
And my brother died at 55, so he would have had a polyp
in that same age time
right.
as well.
Right.
A colonoscopy just takes a few hours of your time. It's simple and low risk when a skilled doctor does it. But what makes me nervous is what if something is there and the doctor doesn't see it? Luckily, most polyps are very slow growing, so that if one is missed this year, it will likely be picked up at my next colonoscopy. That's the importance of regular screening.
You have your arm there for
One of the standard recommendations for colon cancer screening over the age of 50 is a less complete procedure called a sigmoidoscopy.
This is the colon, and it's about 8 feet in length. And a sigmoidoscopy is able to go up the left side of the colon and survey the lining of the left side of the colon. And the colonoscopy is able to go the full distance and survey all the lining of the entire colon.
And so the polyps that I've already had taken out were where?
Transverse colon.
So if I had a sigmoidoscopy, they wouldn't have been found.
Right.
In fact, 40% of colon cancers are found beyond the reach of the sigmoidoscope.
Okay, now we're going to give you some Valium.
He gives me a combination of anesthetics which cause what they call conscious sedation. I can be somewhat alert, yet tolerate any discomfort.
So, yeah, 1 milligram of Valium.
Unlike breast cancer and lung cancer, colon cancer is usually easily preventable by finding and removing a polyp before it becomes a cancer.
Cancer starts somewhere, and it starts with those adenomatous polyps, which then develop into cancer. And if you don't get them at that early stage, they often become silent.
Yeah.
The disease is silent until it gets to a point where it's hard to deal with it. If we see anything unusual or abnormal, we'll take a biopsy, which is a small piece of tissue. If there's something that we think needs to come out, we'll do what we call a polypectomy, which means we take a loop and put it around the abnormal area or the polyp and then remove it with electricity. So by doing these colonoscopies, one can find things before they get to colon cancer.
Right.
Now we're somewhere in the transverse colon. We're getting to the transverse colon.
To see the tissue better, Dr. Giardiello's scope blows air into the colon, expanding it a bit like a balloon, so he can examine the tissue more easily and see any polyps or tumors. It's uncomfortable, but no more uncomfortable than a gas pain. It's something that you can schedule and do and know that you don't have to worry. Doctors estimate that 9 out of 10 cases of colorectal cancer could be prevented by regular colonoscopy. Colonoscopy is just one of several early detection tests available for colorectal cancer. Other tests include the fecal occult blood test, a flexible sigmoidoscopy, a barium enema, and a CEA blood test.
To find out more about colonoscopy and other screening tests, log on to the Colon Cancer Alliance website at ccalliance.org. Or you can call the American Cancer Society at 1-800-ACS-2345.
There were no polyps, no areas that I thought could represent cancer at all. I think it's extremely important, Joe, that you come back and do this every year. With your family history, this is extremely important that you do this to prevent the development of cancer.
I had always been concerned that I overreact to this, to my family situation. Can you go overboard with this stuff?
I think some patients can, but I think that the usual thing that happens is patients are on the other side of the spectrum. They don't do anything about it. They don't recognize the risk that their family history poses to them. That's far and away what happens most of the time. Most people in general want to deny these things. I think that's a human trait that a lot of us have. We deny things and we put them off. We don't want to look at them. And in your case, if you deny this, I think you have a significant risk of having cancer of the colon.
Yeah, people have got to get in touch with the reality of things, and things just don't go away.
I met Andrea Chasen from Boca Raton, Florida, through Alfred Cohen, the same surgeon who had operated on my sister Tricia 15 years before.
I had some blood, fresh blood, in my stool with bowel movement. You read warning signs, you read magazines, you read things. These are the warning signs, and I said, what is this? What is going on here? And I got, a funny feeling in my stomach.
Many patients I see will just make the assumption that they're having bleeding from their hemorrhoids and never see a physician for months, even years. This patient was appropriately concerned and didn't know what the cause was and didn't want to make any assumptions, and saw a doctor, and a very early cancer was diagnosed.
Andrea was diagnosed with stage A colon cancer. She gave us permission to shoot her surgery to encourage others to get screened as early as possible.
There is no group of people who are at low risk for colon cancer. Every woman is at moderate risk for breast cancer and for colorectal cancer. Every man is at moderate risk for colorectal cancer and prostate cancer. And this is a normal colon over here. Here is small intestine for comparison.
Before even getting to the tumor, Dr. Cohen has to carefully separate her colon from the surrounding tissue, organs, blood vessels, and nerves, which, if damaged, can change a person's life.
People get quite concerned when you tell them you're going to take a foot or a foot and a half of the bowel when the tumor is only an inch in size. The reason that we're doing that is to remove the lymph glands that are potentially involved, so we're taking more bowel just to do a better cancer operation. Okay, so I want you to cut away from you. I must have hit something like it. Right in the groove, like a stapler now. I'll need new gloves. So the tumor is right here, between my fingers. All of these tumors begin on the inside of the bowel. So now we're looking at the inside lining of the bowel, which is quite normal. And then we have about an inch away from where I've divided, we have this flat area that's got an ulcer in the center. And this probably started as a pea-sized polyp. And after that turned into a cancer and is now invading into the muscle wall. You'll frequently hear the term, "we've gotten it all." That really does not mean that we know for sure that we have removed every last cancer cell. And that's why there always is some uncertainty. But I will not make any promises to the patient or family until we actually get the pathologist analysis.
The pathologist's report showed there was no sign of spread. Andrea has an excellent chance of a full recovery with no need for chemotherapy or radiation.
Over 90% of colorectal cancer patients are living beyond 5 years when it is diagnosed and treated at the earliest stage. To learn more about colon cancer, call the Cancer Information Service at 1-800-4-CANCER.
Miss Keyworth?
Most cancers are more curable the earlier they are found. Taking advantage of early detection and prevention services can save your life.
My sister was diagnosed with cancer about a year ago, and that brought it home to me that none of us are invincible. When I found out that they could have prevented hers if she had gone in, you know, to have been screened for it, then I realized that, you know, there's nothing can bring her back. But I realized that she probably could have been saved had she done the early screening.
Screening is looking in people who have no symptoms. That's the bottom line, and that's the population we want. It's people who have no symptoms. As soon as they have a symptom, they've moved out of screening, and that may be too late. Good to see you. Okay, well, you came in for your annual cancer screening exam. I see that you have had a colonoscopy since we were last here, and that everything looked pretty good on the colonoscopy. Do you have problems with persistent bloating in the pelvic region?
I don't believe I do.
Okay. Even pelvic pain that may come and go, but that is fairly persistent and doesn't go away and stay away. No problems with that, okay.
No.
And then certainly any type of abnormal bleeding needs to be evaluated promptly.
No, not a problem with that.
Even women who have had their ovaries removed can get a form of ovarian cancer. So certainly women who have had their ovaries removed, if there's a strong family history, should continue to get gynecologic screening.
I didn't know that.
Most women don't realize that, and so it's important to let women know so that they know they need to come in.
Ovarian cancer is what killed my sister Tricia. Ovarian cancer is the leading gynecological cancer killer. Each year, 14,500 American women die from the disease, and over 25,000 women are newly diagnosed.
Ovarian cancer is difficult to detect. Tests for ovarian cancer can include a pelvic exam, a transvaginal ultrasound, a blood test for the tumor marker CA-125. For information about ovarian cancer risk, symptoms, and detection, call the Ovarian Cancer National Alliance at 1-202-331-1332. Or you can call the National Ovarian Cancer Coalition at 1-888-OVARIAN.
Worldwide, cervical cancer is one of the leading cancer killers.
We have identified one of the causes of cervical cancer, the human papillomavirus, or HPV. Recognizing this, there may be barrier methods that we can use, like a condom, to reduce the risk of transmission.
So it's a sexually transmitted disease?
It is a sexually transmitted disease.
Human papillomavirus is the world's most common sexually transmitted disease. 20 million Americans are infected. Though not all strains of HPV lead to cervical cancer, infected women are 10 times more likely to develop the disease.
Okay. Hang on just a second. Let me put this on the slide. And they will have a look at this to look for abnormal cells.
Cervical cancer is almost totally preventable. The Pap smear can detect changing cells in the cervix before they become cancerous.
Many women, when they get their Pap smear, are told by their doctor, if you don't hear from us, everything is okay. I think it's very important to get the results of your test, whether it is normal or abnormal, so you know that you have received the results, and lack of hearing doesn't mean it's okay. It may mean that the physician hasn't even seen the results and they could be abnormal. The bottom line is you have to be very active in your own care. You have to be an advocate for yourself.
Each year, 5,000 American women die of cervical cancer, and over 12,000 new cases are diagnosed. For more information about cervical and other gynecological cancers, call the Gynecological Cancer Foundation at 1-800-444-4441 or log on to the Women's Cancer Network at WCN.org.
Well, let's go ahead and do the breast examination. The medical community is becoming more and more aware of the benefit of screening in that it does promote and lead to early detection, which is, in most cases, a more treatable disease.
97% of women with breast cancer are living beyond 5 years when it is detected and treated at its earliest stage.
We'll go ahead and finish up the exam by getting the mammogram done.
All right, I want you to hold real still now and hold your breath. Don't breathe, don't move. Anything going on? Are you to go back and see your doctor today too, or? No, I think you're done. Okay.
Does she have any family history?
She has very strong colorectal and a breast that has been diagnosed in the family, so we're going to evaluate her for a cancer family syndrome.
And previously she had a cyst noted in the upper outer left breast?
Mm-hmm.
And that was how big?
I'm going to have to, I don't know what the size on that was. What'd you say?
I think it was just a couple mm, is that
Oh,
right?
yeah, 3 millimeters, I believe.
So here it's about 6 mm or so.
So it's grown.
It's grown. So it if in fact it is the same area, it may be reasonable to get a sonogram on that.
Okay. There is a small change in an area that last year was found to be a cyst on an ultrasound, which cysts are benign. However, it's gotten slightly larger. I'd like to get another ultrasound just to confirm that this is still a simple cyst. I'm not overly concerned about it. However, that's the purpose of our screening, is to identify any changes and make sure we check them out promptly. Okay? Questions about it at this point?
No.
Okay. I would say it looks very low risk for malignancy. It looks like a cyst. It's nice and round and smooth. It's in the same area where last year it was a cyst.
Do they pose a greater cancer risk?
They do not pose a greater cancer risk, and we don't have to worry about them as long as we confirm that they are a simple cyst.
Linda's biopsy confirmed the lump was a cyst. A cyst is a fluid-filled mass. It is not cancerous and usually not harmful. In fact, 70% of breast lesions evaluated by biopsy are found to be benign. Linda will continue her annual screenings.
You have good intentions, and you just never seem to get around to working it into that busy schedule. There's a lot of women like that, unfortunately. It's simple, it's effective, and it saves lives. I don't see why they'd put it off.
There are an estimated 1 million women in America with undetected breast cancer. For more information about breast cancer risk and screening recommendations, call the Susan G. Komen Breast Cancer Foundation at 1-800-I'm-AWARE. You can get more help and support at the National Breast Cancer Coalition at 1-800-NBCC-838.
Cancer screenings for men are as valuable as they are for women.
Luke Thomas, a New York City businessman, is deciding what to do with the diagnosis of prostate cancer, the most prevalent cancer in men.
The prostate is a gland integral to a man's reproductive system.
Each year, 37,000 American men die from prostate cancer, and over 179,000 new cases are diagnosed.
Can you tell me how you discovered that you had prostate cancer?
This was done through a routine physical, and part of the physical entailed a digital rectal examination, a DRE, which really didn't show anything, but my general practitioner insisted that I have the blood test, the PSA test done. The PSA test came back and it was elevated.
PSA stands for prostate-specific antigen. It's one of a number of blood tests that can now measure proteins that are associated with certain cancers such as ovarian, breast, colon, and prostate. Not every elevated PSA is caused by cancer. It took a series of biopsies to confirm Luke's doctor's suspicions.
Once I found out that my condition, I wanted to know more.
Yeah.
I wanted to know a lot more.
Whatever there is to find out, he will.
Seems very organized.
Very organized. Organized, organized, organized. Always. Mr. Precise. That's him.
Is that from American Cancer Society? Yeah.
For Luke, surgery and radiation are among several treatment options, but choosing one can be confusing.
If you speak to a surgeon wants to do surgery. If you speak to a radiation oncologist, he wants to do radiation. Where do you go?
Luke went to see Winston Dyer, a 5-year survivor of prostate cancer. Winston works for CapCure, a national foundation dedicated to prostate cancer research and education. He focuses on bringing awareness to African American men.
Luke had 4.5 hours of questions. He wasn't really too worried about impotence or incontinence. Those never came up. He was worried about, he's a healthy guy right now, and he wanted to stay healthy.
For reasons that are not clearly understood, African American men are more likely to be diagnosed with prostate cancer than white men. And of those diagnosed, African American men are more than twice as likely to die from the disease.
Even after a second opinion, Luke was still unsure of what to do. So Winston arranged for Luke to meet his surgeon, Dr. Ivan Grunberger of Long Island College Hospital.
How are you feeling?
A little bit stressed.
For a good reason. Yeah. Is there any family history, prostate cancer?
Not that I know of, except that my brother did have a procedure done, which we never talked about. So I don't know if it was a prostatectomy or what he had done, because he didn't discuss it.
Benign disease for cancer. Okay. Which is the problem that we talked about. People don't talk about these things.
People don't talk, exactly.
Okay. What about your diet?
Diet, well, I've modified my diet. That's one thing I've done. I've modified my diet in that I've cut out fat from my diet.
For diets recommended to fight prostate cancer, you can call CapCure at 1-800-757-2873. The American Cancer Society reports that 1/3 of all cancers could be prevented by changes in diet and lifestyle, and this does not even include cancers due to smoking. For more information as to how your diet and lifestyle can affect your cancer risk, contact the American Cancer Society at 1-800-ACS-2345.
Surgery, radical prostatectomy is still a radical treatment. It's still the most invasive of all the procedures that we do. It also has probably the best track record in terms of long-term cancer cure rate, okay?
In the past, almost all men suffered impotence and incontinence after radical prostatectomy. Today, new nerve-sparing surgical techniques allow many more men to return to normal function.
And I know you mentioned to me that you have been sexually active prior to the biopsy,
yes.
And you want to continue to do that.
For more information about side effects from prostate cancer treatment, call us too, the largest prostate cancer support group in the country, at 1-800-808-7866. To learn about side effects from treatments for any type of cancer, call the Cancer Information Service at 1-800-4CANCER.
Why is prostate cancer such a controversial subject?
There are still many groups within the medical community that believe that prostate cancer should not be screened for, and it should not be necessarily treated very aggressively. I mean, Luke is a perfect example why PSA screening is so important. Here's a man who is a healthy 65-year-old man, no symptoms, and the only suspicion that came up was because of his PSA. Unfortunately, there are no real good warning signs for prostate cancer, because when prostate cancer is symptomatic, it generally is pretty advanced. So if we wait for symptoms to bring us to the doctor, we're not doing the right thing.
This is our work in progress here.
Luke decided to have his prostate removed. With the cancer caught so early, he has an excellent chance of long-term survival with normal function.
For more information about prostate cancer risk and screening, call CAP-CURE at 1-800-757-2873.
Although most early cancer detection allows us a better rate of cure, the real hope for the future may lie in an exciting new approach called chemoprevention.
Here you go. Thank you.
At the National Cancer Institute, it's Dr. Leslie Ford who coordinates the chemoprevention trials. Their landmark study on tamoxifen led to its being the first drug approved by the FDA for chemoprevention.
The idea of taking a drug, a pill, to prevent cancer is a new concept. Somebody that is at increased risk for developing cancer because they have polyps or because they have an atypical cells in a breast biopsy would take a pill to lower their risk of developing a subsequent cancer.
That's really leads us into the whole concept of cancer as a developing process as opposed to
exactly
getting cancer.
Exactly, yeah. The basic research is to understand what, quote, initiates a cell, what gets the cell going down this road that then eventually leads to an invasive cancer. And chemoprevention is where in that process can we intervene so that you never get to the invasive cancer.
To find out if you are a candidate for a chemoprevention trial, call the National Cancer Institute's Cancer Information Service at 1-800-4-CANCER.
In terms of preventing cancer, if there was one thing that we need and should do, it's to stop smoking.
Right.
Now, that's easier said than done.
And that would stop how many cancers a year?
About 30% of the deaths from cancer, so about 180,000 to 200,000 Americans each year die from cancer due to smoking.
Smoking causes 30% of all cancer deaths. Almost 200,000 cancer deaths a year could be prevented by not smoking.